Welcome to Sleep Library. I'm so glad you're here. Let's take a deep breath together. In through the nose and out through the mouth. Let the day gently melt away behind you. You're safe now. It's just you, your breath, and a warm cocoon of thought. Make sure to like the video and subscribe if you enjoyed this video and comment where you're watching from. Tonight, we're going to drift through a question that's both timeless and tender. One that philosophers have whispered about for centuries, usually while stroking their beards and gazing meaningfully at candles. It's the kind of question that might float into your mind when you're standing in the kitchen trying to decide between coffee or peppermint tea, or when you scroll through your contacts, hover over a name and wonder, should I text them? It's the question of free will. Do we truly choose what we do? Or are we just highly intelligent meat puppets riding out a script written by the universe? Before we go deeper, I want you to imagine a moment, a small, quiet decision. Picture yourself waking up in the morning. You shuffle into the kitchen. The sun hasn't quite made its way through the blinds. Your hair is doing that uncooperative thing it always does when you sleep on your left side. You stand in front of your cupboard, reaching for your coffee or tea or hot lemon water if you're in a detox phase. Did you really pick that drink? Or did something, maybe your habits, your chemistry, your mother's voice in your head saying, caffeine is dehydrating, darling, pick it for you? That's what this question is really about. Not the grand cinematic choices, not the big move to Paris and reinvent myself decisions, though we'll get to those too. It starts in the quiet places, the small, everyday forks in the road. And we talk about free will because, in our hearts, we want to be the authors of our story. We feel free, but feeling free isn't always the same as being free. So we ask, do I choose to be who I am? Or am I simply playing out a role that was cast for me before I could even pronounce the word decision? These are soft, curious questions. And tonight, we're not here to solve them. We're not here to debate or dissect or leave you spinning in existential dread. This is not that kind of channel. We don't do dread here, just cozy reflection and light blanket-based philosophy. So let's drift gently through the fog. Let ideas float by like clouds or like those thoughts that pop into your head right before sleep and make you go, why did I say that thing in third grade? Don't grasp, don't fix, just rest. So, with the hush of night around us, let's begin our journey. At the beginning, it's comforting to know that we are not the first to wonder. Long before electricity, before smartphones, before to-do lists and standing desks and oat milk lattes, people sat under the stars and asked the same questions we're asking tonight. And it's with them we begin. Let's go way back to ancient Greece. There's a man in a flowing robe beard, like sea foam, eyes full of thought strolling under an olive tree in Athens. His name is Plato. Plato spoke of a world beyond this one, a realm of perfect forms. He believed our souls come from that realm, choosing to return to it through a life of wisdom and virtue. For him, we weren't just flesh and thought. We were spirits trying to remember where we came from. To Plato, free will was real, but hard. It meant rising above instinct, like choosing not to eat the last cookie, even when you really want it. Because virtue, like cookie restraint, takes practice. Now picture Aristotle, Plato's student. A little more grounded, probably less into forms and more into logic and biology. He stands beside a gently flowing river, watching it twist around rocks and roots. He believed that we are shaped by our habits, our environment, but also that we could choose to improve, slowly, deliberately, like someone learning to whistle or trying to keep a houseplant alive. He called it practical reason. To Aristotle, freedom wasn't just doing whatever we want. It was cultivating good habits, shaping character. Think of him as the original self-help author, with a beard. And then there was Epicurus. Now he gets a bad rap. People think he was all about pleasure, like ancient Greece's answer to a party animal. But what he actually wanted was peace, freedom from suffering, ataraxia. He believed the universe was made of atoms, tiny particles, sometimes swerving unpredictably. That little swerve gave us wiggle room. Epicurus thought, maybe, just maybe, those unpredictable motions mean we aren't bound by fate. Which is lovely, really, the universe. Not as a rigid machine, but as something with just enough bounds for choice to slip in. Now, centuries passed, and the question of free will entered sacred spaces. Think of St. Augustine, a man who probably had a lot of journals filled with self-reflection and mild guilt. He believed we had free will, but that it was broken. That we want to choose good, but often don't. That we're stuck unless grace lifts us. Imagine wanting to run, but being ankle deep in mud. That's how Augustine saw us. And then Thomas Aquinas, gentle soul, brilliant mind, possibly great at comforting goats, though that part is unconfirmed. He wanted to reconcile reason and faith. He believed God gave us free will not as a test, but as a gift, because love must be chosen. Even God, Aquinas thought, wouldn't force love. Fast forward now, wigs on, Enlightenment era. René Descartes whispering, I think, therefore I am. He separated mind and body, said we could be free in our thoughts, even if our bodies were part of the physical machine. And then, Immanuel Kant, always serious, always precise. He said freedom wasn't about doing what we want, it was doing what we ought. Obeying the inner voice of reason, the moral law within, even if it meant not buying that fifth candle during a sale. All of these thinkers, across cultures and centuries, reached for something. They all shared one quiet longing, that within the silence, between impulse and action, there might be a breath, a space, and inside that space, a self that could choose, whether it's Plato's eternal soul, or Aquinas' divine spark, or Kant's inner compass. They were all trying to whisper the same thing. We are not just reacting, we are reflecting. And in that reflection lies something like freedom. Now, rest. Let that idea settle into your pillow. The next part of our journey will be more challenging. We'll walk into a world where choice vanishes into cause and effect. But for now, you're doing beautifully. Let your breath move slowly in and out. You don't have to know the answers. You just have to be here. And you are. Let's drift now into a world where every effect has a cause. A world where nothing, not a single breath, not a single blink happens by accident. Imagine lying on a quiet beach, watching the tide roll in. Every wave shaped by the moon, every ripple responding to gravity, wind, and distant storms you'll never see. You brush your fingers through the sand. Even that, the texture, the movement, the tiny pebbles rolling between your fingers, is shaped by physics older than your name. That is what determinism feels like. It's the idea that everything in the universe, including your thoughts, preferences, and decisions, is part of a vast, unbroken chain of cause and effect. No randomness, no miracles, just consequence. Now, let's meet an old friend, Isaac Newton. Picture him in the 17th century, sitting under an apple tree. Not because he was a philosopher of leisure, but because apparently all big ideas in science happen near fruit. Suddenly, plunk, an apple falls. And Isaac, instead of thinking, oh, free snack, starts thinking about gravity, about laws of motion, about how the universe might not be wild and unpredictable, but orderly, mechanical, like a cosmic pocket watch, ticking perfectly through time. His equations gave birth to what we now call the clockwork universe. Every object moves according to laws. Every event has a cause. Even you, stirring your tea in slow circles. You're not free, say the determinists. You're just continuing a story set in motion billions of years ago, long before kettles existed. Centuries later, Pierre-Simon Laplace takes it further. He dreams up something we now call Laplace's demon, a theoretical superintelligence, kind of like a Google algorithm crossed with a Greek god. If this being knew the position and momentum of every atom in the universe, it could predict everything. From solar flares to your decision to order dessert, which, to be fair, was probably predictable. Chocolate lava cake tends to transcend free will. But here's the spooky bit. If everything is predictable, then it's also inevitable. The way you laugh, the way you cry, the way you paused just now to adjust your blanket. All of it encoded into the universe like a cosmic playlist on shuffle you thought you curated. It's unsettling, but also strangely peaceful. Because if nothing is truly your doing, then maybe, just maybe, you can stop blaming yourself. Your awkward moments, your unreturned texts, your unfinished novel sitting in a Google Doc from 2018. They were all parts of the plan. And here's where determinism starts to seep into deeper places. Into psychology, into neuroscience. If we are entirely caused, what does that mean for choice? For guilt? For justice? Can you punish someone for doing what they were always going to do? It's like yelling at rain for falling on your picnic. Sure, it ruined your sandwiches, but did it really choose to? These are the questions that make determinism more than just physics. They make it personal. Because if the chain of causes leads all the way back to the Big Bang, then maybe we're not flawed. We're just playing our part. Like waves in the ocean, like leaves in the wind. Still beautiful, still worth watching. Just not as free as we thought. But don't worry, you're not alone. And you're not stuck. Because just up ahead on our path, there's a bridge. A bridge between order and freedom. Let's walk across it. Very slowly. And that bridge is called compatibilism. Let's step gently now into the middle path. A softer road with fewer sharp corners and more places to sit down and think for a while. This is the world of compatibilism. It's a view that says, yes, the universe may be determined, but yes, we might still be free. Some people hear that and say, excuse me, that sounds like trying to have your philosophical cake and eat it too. And compatibilists would smile, take a polite bite, and say, yes, exactly. Because compatibilism isn't about denying determinism. It accepts it fully. The atoms are still atoming. The laws of physics are still doing their law of physicsing. But compatibilists ask a simple question. What does it actually mean to be free? Let's take a walk. You're in a forest. The kind of forest where the air smells like pine and possibility. Sunlight filters through the canopy. You hear birds, some of them may be judging you, but most are just vibing. The path forks in two, left or right. You pause, you think. You remember that the right path has a nice bench, but the left path smells like lavender. You choose the right. Now were you free? A determinist might say, nope. Your brain, shaped by every past walk, every scent memory, every foot cramp from a bad shoe, made that choice for you. But the compatibilist, they'd say you were absolutely free because no one forced you. You chose according to your desires, your reasons. And freedom, in this view, doesn't mean breaking the laws of cause and effect. It means acting without coercion, without someone holding your arm and dragging you down the trail, yelling, "Bench, you must sit on the bench." In this view, freedom is not uncaused action, it's self-caused action. Now meet David Hume, a Scottish philosopher who thought about these things while likely sipping tea and enduring chilly weather. Hume said, "We are free when we act according to our own motivations, not someone else's threats, not some external force. If you want to eat the cookie, and you do eat the cookie, and no one shoved it in your mouth, that's freedom. Even if your childhood cookie memories and serotonin cravings played a role." And now, say hello to Daniel Dennett, a modern philosopher with sharp intellect and charming dad joke energy. Dennett believes that freedom is real, not in a magical, metaphysical sense, but in a practical, human sense. He compares us to software. We run on biological hardware, sure, but we update, we revise, we debug, we learn from experience and reprogram ourselves, sometimes slowly, sometimes with coffee, often with therapy. So in this view, free will is the capacity to reflect and change. Even if you didn't choose your starting point, you can still shape your direction. Think of it this way. You're a river carving a canyon. Yes, gravity guides you. Yes, the rock resists. But still, you twist and turn. You make beauty as you go. Or picture this. You're at a restaurant. The waiter hands you a menu. You pick the pasta, not because of destiny, but because you love pasta. You're not coerced. You're not random. You're just you, choosing calmly from the menu of your life. And even if you couldn't have chosen otherwise, compatibilists say, that doesn't matter, because what matters is that it came from you. Not some puppeteer, not some demon, not your neighbor Karen. You. So tonight, as you drift beneath your blankets, let this comfort you. You are a product of causes, yes, but you are also a creator of consequences. You are the result of stories told before you, and the beginning of stories still unwritten. In this gentle paradox, there is peace. You are the wind, shaped by pressure and weather and seasons, but still moving, still flowing, still free. Imagine this. You're standing on the edge of a quiet cliff, gazing out at the ocean. The waves are soft tonight, hushed, like the world is holding its breath. And in your hand is a pebble. You could toss it left, you could toss it right, or you could let it fall from your hand. No one's watching, no one's judging. No algorithm is recommending your next move based on previous pebble throws. You simply choose. That moment, that mysterious sense that you genuinely could have done otherwise, is at the heart of libertarian free will. Now, let's pause for a clarification. This has nothing to do with politics. You don't have to believe in small government to believe in this kind of freedom. No one's going to ask for your voting history. Libertarian free will is about something much older, the belief that we are not just elaborate dominoes in a grand cosmic chain of causes. It says, you are not a puppet. You are not a pre-scripted robot in a sitcom rerun. You are free. Not kind of free. Not mostly free. Truly, radically free. This idea is ancient, older than bedtime, older than metaphors about cliffs. We feel it in stories. The moment the hero stands at the crossroads, unsure but resolute. The moment someone resists temptation. The moment a character in your favorite movie looks into the camera and makes a choice that changes everything. We see it in religion too. The belief that you can choose light over darkness, kindness over cruelty, chocolate over strawberry. Okay, maybe that one's less theological, but still. The beauty of this view is that it preserves something we hold dear, moral responsibility. If you could have chosen otherwise, then your actions mean something. They reveal character. They are yours, not just reactions, but revelations. But this freedom comes with a question. If our actions aren't fully caused, then where do they come from? Let's go back to that pebble in your hand. If your decision to toss it left wasn't determined by your DNA, your childhood, or the fact that you had a weirdly emotional dream last night about sea turtles, then what was it? A spark? A soul? Some mysterious transcendent you hiding just behind your eyes? Philosophers like Robert Cain have thought about this. Cain says that free will shows up in self-forming actions, big, high-stakes choices where you face deep internal conflict, like blowing the whistle on injustice, walking away from a family pattern, choosing not to send that text you know you'll regret. These aren't easy choices. They take effort. They pull at your values. And in those moments, Cain says, you're not just making a decision, you're making yourself. But, as with most beautiful ideas, there's a catch. Some skeptics argue, if a decision isn't caused, then isn't it just random, like a coin toss, like shaking a magic 8-ball that replies, you are free, but only because it landed on that option this time. And randomness doesn't feel much like freedom. That's the tension at the heart of the libertarian view. On one side, hope. On the other, chaos. And yet, many hold on to this idea because it speaks to something deep inside us, a quiet flame that whispers, you can change, you can choose, you are not trapped. Picture yourself again. This time, you're dancing. The music swells. You don't think. You don't plan. You just move. No one choreographed this. No one told you what to do. You are, in that moment, pure motion. Isn't that freedom? Libertarians would say yes. They'd say, you are not a gear in a machine. You are not a number in a formula. You are something beautifully unpredictable. So tonight, as the dark wraps around you like a warm shawl, let yourself believe, even just for a moment, that you are not merely matter. You are meaning. And that meaning just might be yours to shape. Let's gently turn now from the realm of ancient scrolls and cliffside metaphors to the glow of MRI machines and brain scans. It's time to look inward literally. Because if we want to talk about free will, we have to talk about the brain. The squishy, electric command center behind your eyes. The one that gets oddly excited by the smell of cinnamon or that one nostalgic ringtone. Let's begin with an experiment. The year is 1983. The scientist is Benjamin Libet, a man curious about how we decide to move. He asked participants to flick their wrist whenever they felt like it. No pressure, no wrist judging. Then he measured two things when they felt the urge to move. and when their brain activity started preparing for the movement. And here's what he found. The brain got started before the person knew they were going to move. Roughly half a second before. Let that sink in. Your brain might be like, wrist, go, before you've had your morning coffee. Libet's results were puzzling. Some scientists said this meant that free will is an illusion, that consciousness is just a narrator arriving after the plot twist. You don't decide, you just explain. Like showing up late to a party and pretending you planned it that way. But Libet wasn't ready to abandon free will entirely. He suggested we might still have a veto, a power to say no at the last moment. He called it free won't, which sounds like a joke, but isn't. It means you can stop yourself. Which, if you've ever resisted another cookie, is kind of miraculous. But there's more to the mind than wrist flicks. Let's talk about memory. Memory isn't a dusty filing cabinet. It's more like a messy scrapbook, or a fridge covered in post-it notes, some of which are not entirely accurate. Every time you remember something, you slightly rewrite it, which means your past, the stuff that guides your choices, is being edited by the very brain that uses it to decide. No pressure. Now sprinkle in emotion. We like to think of ourselves as logical, but let's be honest. We've made big decisions while hungry. We've cried during commercials. We've bought something ridiculous online because it just felt right. Emotions don't just color our choices, they tilt the whole canvas. And then there's the subconscious. That silent, mysterious force beneath the surface. It nudges you toward what feels familiar. It remembers what your conscious mind has forgotten. It may be the reason you love someone or fear something, or crave pickles at 2 a.m. We don't judge here. So if our brain is making choices before we know, shaped by emotions we didn't invite, influenced by memories we keep rewriting, where does that leave free will? Some like Sam Harris say it leaves us without it, that we are passengers on a train we didn't build, reading a menu we didn't choose, wondering why we always pick the same sandwich. But others say maybe free will isn't about perfect control. Maybe it's about awareness. The more we know about our minds, the more we can pause, breathe, reflect. That's what mindfulness teaches us, to create space. And in that space between urge and action, there may be just enough room for freedom to live. Not the loud, dramatic freedom of heroes and movies, but the quiet kind. The kind that lets you choose stillness instead of scrolling, or kindness instead of defensiveness, or sleep instead of staying up too late trying to understand your own brain. So tonight, as your mind begins to drift, know this: your brain is not your boss, it's your partner. And together, you can write something beautiful. As we move forward, gently, like thoughts floating downstream, we find ourselves among modern voices, the philosophers and scientists who don't wear togas or powdered wigs, but who still ask the same haunting, beautiful questions. Who are we, really? Do we choose our lives, or do our lives choose us? Let's begin with a thinker who pulls no punches, Sam Harris. Now, Sam is a neuroscientist, philosopher, and a guy who probably has a very well-organized bookshelf. And Sam has a rather firm opinion. He doesn't believe in free will, not even a little bit. To him, every choice you make, from deciding to meditate, to picking chocolate over vanilla, to not texting your ex at 2 a.m., comes from causes you didn't choose. Your genetics, your upbringing, your mood, that song stuck in your head, your breakfast, He paints a picture of the mind not as a captain steering a ship, but as a passenger discovering where the ship's already going. Harris often asks this question: can you choose your next thought? Try it. Try to will a thought into existence before it shows up. Tricky, isn't it? Because thoughts just appear, like surprise guests at a party you're hosting but didn't plan. And if thoughts just arise, Harris says, then how can we claim ownership over the actions that follow them? To him, free will is like believing in unicorns, comforting, but imaginary. But he doesn't say this to be cruel. In fact, Sam believes that letting go of free will can make us more compassionate. Because if we truly accept that people didn't choose to be who they are, we might judge less. We might understand more. Forgiveness, in this view, isn't excusing. It's recognizing the depth of the story behind the behavior. But not everyone's ready to toss free will out with the morning coffee grounds. Let's meet Robert Kane. Kane still believes in freedom, the real, honest-to-goodness kind. But not the easy, everyday kind of choice, not picking a sandwich or choosing which show to binge. He believes in self-forming actions, those rare, pivotal moments where your very soul feels stretched in two directions, like the moment you tell the truth even though it costs you, or when you break a cycle saying, no more, it ends with me. Kane says that in those moments, we aren't just making a decision, we're becoming someone. We're authors writing a paragraph in our own moral story. But critics of Kane have questions. They ask, if something isn't caused, then isn't it random? And if it is caused, doesn't that mean it's not free? It's a classic philosophical pickle, one with no easy way to slice. Now, let's bring in one more voice, Daniel Wegner. Wegner was a psychologist who studied something called the illusion of conscious will. He found that we often explain our actions after they happen, not unlike someone claiming they meant to trip on the sidewalk because they wanted a closer look at the pavement. He studied cases where people believed they were in control, but weren't, and others where people acted, but claimed they had no idea why. Wegner suggested that consciousness might not be the driver of the car, but the PR team, making up reasons after the fact just to keep the narrative clean. Now don't panic. This doesn't mean you're not you. It just means your mind is a little more mysterious than you thought. So where do we land? Are we captains? Passengers? Self-aware stardust? Maybe all of the above? Maybe none. Maybe the answer is not to pick a side, but to sit with the paradox, to smile at the mystery, because the modern thinkers don't agree and that's okay. Tonight, as their voices echo softly in your mind, just know you are not alone in your wondering. You are part of a long, beautiful tradition, a river of thinkers and dreamers, all asking the same quiet question. What does it mean to be free? Let's come back now, down from the high branches of theory, into the warm light of the everyday. Because whether or not we're truly free, the belief in freedom touches almost everything. Let's start small. Your alarm goes off. You hit snooze, you grumble. You contemplate becoming a morning person tomorrow. And eventually, you get up. Now, did you choose to get up? Or were you nudged by responsibility, by the scent of coffee, by your cat aggressively walking across your face? Here's the curious thing. If you believe you could have stayed in bed, your getting up feels triumphant, like a tiny victory. But if you believe you had to get up, it might feel like surrender. That's the power of belief. Because free will isn't just a theory. It's a lens, a way of interpreting every moment. It shapes how we see ourselves and how we see others. Picture this. Someone cuts you off in traffic. If you believe in free will, you might think, wow, that person made a selfish choice. But if you believe in determinism, you might pause and think, maybe they're rushing to a hospital, or maybe they've just had a really rough day. The story you believe changes the story you tell. And this isn't just a philosophical debate. It shows up in real places like the justice system. Courts often assume that people could have acted differently. That's the basis for guilt, blame, and punishment. But if science tells us that behavior is shaped by trauma, by brain chemistry, by patterns the person never saw coming, then maybe justice needs to evolve. Maybe it's less about punishment and more about understanding. Less about blame, more about change. Now zoom in again to something even closer. Motivation. Studies have shown that people who believe in free will tend to be more productive. They work harder, help others more, even cheat less, which is fascinating. Believing you're in control makes you behave more responsibly. Even if plot twist you aren't actually in control. So is it all a beautiful lie? Or is the belief itself part of what makes you free? Like a dance where pretending you know the steps actually teaches you how to move. And then there's the question of responsibility. What do we do when someone does something terrible? If we say, they couldn't help it, are we letting them off the hook? No. Even in a world without full freedom, we can still set boundaries. We can still protect one another. It's like raising a toddler. You don't scream you're evil when they knock over a lamp. You calmly say, let's not do that again. The same principle applies. We can hold people accountable not out of rage, but out of care. Because actions have ripples. And society is, in a way, just a giant pond trying not to tip over. So tonight, as your body begins to melt into the mattress, let yourself consider this. Maybe you're not completely free. Maybe you never were. But maybe, just maybe, that doesn't matter. Because every day you still wake up and decide what kind of person to be. You still choose whether to speak with kindness, whether to listen with presence, whether to forgive. And those choices, whatever their source, still shape the world, still shape you. And maybe that quiet act of caring is the freest thing we ever do. Close your eyes, if they aren't already. And if they are, wonderful. You're already ahead of the game. Let your breath deepen and your shoulders soften. Let go of the little to-do lists that like to sneak into your thoughts at night. This is your moment, just you and the quiet. Now, gently, like flipping through a photo album you forgot you kept, I'd like you to recall a moment in your life, a decision that mattered. It doesn't have to be dramatic. You don't have to have jumped on a plane or changed careers or heroically declared anything to anyone. Maybe it was the day you decided to move to a new place, or the moment you sent a message that had been sitting in your drafts for days. Or maybe, and this is often the most powerful kind, it was the quiet resolve to let something go. A grudge, a worry, a version of yourself that no longer fit. Let that memory rise gently, like steam from a mug on a cold morning. What were you feeling in that moment? Nervous, hopeful, a little giddy and a little terrified, like when you buy a houseplant and genuinely believe this time you'll keep it alive. Were you pulled in different directions, the familiar tug of war between safety and growth? Now ask yourself gently, did that choice come from the real you? Not the version others expected, not the you who performs or protects or procrastinates, but the you that sits quietly beneath all the noise. Was there a breath, just one, before you acted? A space where everything paused, the world hushed, and only your heart spoke? Or did the choice happen almost automatically, like a whisper you followed without knowing why? Now, think of another moment. A mistake. Something you regret. It's okay, we all have them. You're in very human company. Let that memory rise, not to scold or shame, but to understand. Maybe it was a moment of impatience, or silence when words were needed. Maybe it was a decision that made sense at the time, but stings now, in hindsight. Can you feel the path that led you there? The pressures, the fears, the emotions, the exhaustion. Was it really you, freely choosing? Or were you caught in a current you didn't see coming? We often ask, why did I do that? But maybe the better question is, what was I carrying in that moment? Again, no answers needed. Just a soft place to sit with the question. And now take a breath in and out. Think of a moment of change, a turning point. Not necessarily a grand one, just a shift, a slow realization, a quiet yes, a brave no. Maybe it was the day you decided to speak up, or to stay silent. Maybe it was the first time you forgave someone, even if it was just a little bit, even if that someone was yourself. Can you feel that moment even now? The ripple it sent forward. Because whether that change was sparked by freedom or fate, it shaped your path. And that path is still unfolding. And now, one final memory for tonight. Think of someone you love, truly, deeply love. Maybe they're close, maybe they're far. Maybe they live now only in memory, or in the rhythm of your own heartbeat. Picture a moment with them. Not a dramatic moment. No speeches, no fireworks. Just being, sitting together, sharing a glance, a laugh, a silence. Let that memory wrap around you like your favorite blanket, the one you keep meaning to wash but never quite do, because it smells like home. Now ask yourself gently, did you choose to love them? Or did the love choose you? This is where the question of free will becomes something more than theory. It becomes touch. It becomes time. It becomes you. So let these reflections float. Don't analyze. Don't grasp. Just let them hover, like dust in soft light. And know this, whether you are entirely free or only feel like you are, your choices still echo. And your life, with all its beauty and its bruises, still matters. That is enough. You are enough. And now we arrive at the end. But not an end like closing a book. More like setting it gently on your bedside table, letting the story linger in the air like the scent of something sweet. Tonight we wandered together through ancient cities of thought, through libraries of logic and fields of feeling. We sat with Plato and Aristotle, sipped tea with Aquinas, floated beside Newton and Hume, nodded thoughtfully at Kant, and probably confused Laplace's demon, who, to be fair, may need a nap more than we do. We stood on the cliffside of libertarian free will. We ducked into the lab with Libet. We listened to Sam Harris's stern voice and Robert Kane's hopeful one. And we smiled as Wegener reminded us that we're sometimes narrating our lives like slightly unreliable but well-meaning storytellers. We drifted from neurons to nostalgia, from causation to compassion, from philosophy to feeling. And through it all, One question cradled us like a lullaby. Do we have free will? And though we didn't find a final answer, we found something better. We found curiosity and wonder, and the beautiful, slow realization that maybe the answer doesn't need to come wrapped in certainty. Maybe we are not problems to solve, but mysteries to sit with. Maybe we are dancers moving to rhythms we didn't choose, but still choosing how we move. Maybe we are books full of borrowed words, yes, but with blank pages still waiting. Or maybe we are stardust, briefly arranged in the shape of someone wondering about stardust. So as your breath slows and your mind softens, let the questions rest beside you. They're not meant to be burdens. They're lullabies. And the most comforting lullabies don't always make perfect sense. They just make you feel held. So tonight, let this final thought drift over you like a whispered goodnight. Maybe it doesn't matter whether we're free, as long as we feel like we are. And yet, even as the curtain gently falls on the question of free will, something inside us stirs, a quiet wondering. Because the moment we ask, am I free? Another question wakes up beside it. Who am I? Not in the shallow name tag at a networking event sense, but in the deeper way, the way a tree might ask about its roots, or a shadow wonders about the light behind it. You see, the question of free will isn't just about choice. It's about identity. It's about consciousness. It's about that soft, strange feeling that you are someone with a history, a future, a story that continues even when no one else is watching. So let's drift there now, slowly. Let's follow the thread from freedom to self. Because what is freedom really, without a self to be free? Consciousness is the part of you that knows you're here. It's the part that hears these words, not just as sounds, but as something personal, something meant for you, even though we've never met. It's what lets you step outside of your thoughts and look at them, like sitting in a cozy cafe, watching people pass by through the window, except the people are your memories, your ideas, your inner monologue narrating what's happening as you listen. And consciousness is one of the deepest puzzles of all. It's the mystery inside the mystery. Where does it come from? Is it just a side effect of a really complex brain? Just electricity and meat and somehow poetry? Or is it something more? Something the brain receives, like an old radio picking up a signal we still don't understand. Some scientists say that consciousness is what happens when information processes itself in just the right way, like water turning to steam when the conditions are perfect. Others suggest that consciousness might be more fundamental, that it's not produced by the brain, but revealed through it, like light through stained glass. We don't know, and maybe we don't need to. Because the fact that you are conscious that you can ask, who am I, is already remarkable. Even if the answer is just a gentle shrug and a smile. Now take a breath. And as you breathe out, think about attention. Because attention is where consciousness points its flashlight. Where you choose or seem to choose to look. Have you noticed how slippery attention is? One moment you're reading. The next you're remembering that weird dream where your high school math teacher was on a skateboard. You bring your attention back. And again, it wanders. Like a puppy learning to heel. Or like trying to carry too many groceries and dropping a lime. Attention is a dance between effort and surrender. And it makes us ask, if I can't fully control what I focus on, am I the one choosing? Or am I just watching? And if so, who is the watcher? Some traditions call this part of you the witness, the still point behind the noise, the part of you that doesn't try to fix or judge or plan it, just notices. It sees your joy, your fear, your endless internal debate about whether to text someone first or wait and pretend you were busy. And yet, it stays silent, like the sky, watching the weather pass. If you can rest in that place even for a moment, you may feel something strange, something peaceful, the kind of peace that doesn't come from having answers, but from letting the questions float, like petals on a pond, because the self is not so solid after all. We like to think of ourselves as one unified person, but really, we're more like a small community. There's the part of you that wants to stay in bed, and the part that remembers you have to get up, the part that's brave, the part that's scared, the part that still cringes at something you said 6 years ago on a Tuesday afternoon. And yet, somehow, they're all you, held together by memory, emotion, and that quiet awareness that says, I'm still here. So maybe we're not a single voice, but a chorus. And maybe free will is not about having total control. Maybe it's about learning to listen, listening to the parts of you that whisper instead of shout, the quiet intuition, the soft gut feeling, the inner child who just wants to be safe and seen. So, as your mind drifts, think about this. Maybe being free doesn't mean choosing perfectly. Maybe it means choosing honestly, choosing with presence, choosing with kindness, even when you don't know why, especially when you don't know why. Now feel the way your body has settled, how your breath has softened, how the space around you feels a little more quiet, a little more gentle. You're not just a passenger on a train. You are also the observer at the window, the one who marvels at the scenery, who reflects, who dreams. And maybe, just maybe, dreaming is its own kind of freedom. Even if your dreams are weirdly specific, like being late for a class you never took in a building that doesn't exist, that's okay. You're allowed to be mysterious even to yourself. So rest now. Let the self dissolve a little. You don't have to hold it all together tonight. Let your identity soften. Let the need to decide melt away. You are not just your thoughts. You are the space between them. And that space is vast and quiet and free. There's something strangely comforting about not having to be sure, about letting go of the need to grip reality with both hands and just floating with it. Like a leaf on a slow-moving river, no resistance, no rush. Because after all these ideas, determinism, agency, attention, consciousness, we find ourselves touching a very delicate thread. Time. Not time in the ticking clock, rush hour sense, but time as we feel it. Because what is choice, or freedom, or thought, without time to contain it? Time is the invisible stage upon which your entire life quietly unfolds. It's strange, isn't it? Sometimes time moves so slowly, you can feel the weight of each second. Like when you're lying awake at 2 a.m., sure that you've forgotten something important. And sometimes it disappears altogether, like when you're laughing with someone you love, or standing in a warm shower trying to remember if you've already washed your hair. You probably did, but no harm in double checking. But here's the curious thing. Your experience of time isn't fixed. It stretches, shrinks, loops, even pauses. And sometimes, just for a moment, it feels like it stops altogether. Have you felt that? the space between inhale and exhale, between thought and action, between the past and the next possible version of yourself. That space, that hush, might be where freedom lives. Because in that stillness, you're not being pulled forward or pushed back. You're just here, now. And maybe now is all we ever really have. Not in a dramatic, live in the moment poster kind of way, but in the quiet truth that the past is memory and the future is story, and all you ever really touch is this breath, and this one, and this one. So what does that mean for free will? Well, maybe it means we're not deciding the future. Maybe we're participating in the unfolding. Maybe free will isn't some cosmic power-up, but a quiet agreement with the present moment. A willingness to meet it rather than control it. A choice to respond rather than react. And in that meeting, something beautiful happens. You stop living from habit, and you start living from awareness. Even if it's just for a heartbeat. Even if it's just long enough to say, no, not this time. Or, yes, I think I will. Let's zoom in even more now. To the tiniest decisions, the micro movements, the subtle shifts that no one else sees. Like the moment you decide to drink more water, or to be a little kinder to yourself. Or to stop repeating that unkind thing you always say in your head when you make a mistake. These are the choices that no one cheers for. No finish lines, no trophies. But they matter, because they shape you gently, quietly, like a river carves a canyon. These small, often invisible acts of self-direction might be the truest form of free will we have. And maybe, just maybe, you've been practicing freedom all along. Every time you pause before reacting, every time you resist the pull of an old story, every time you whisper, I can try again tomorrow. That's not nothing. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. Because the real question isn't, do I have free will? The real question is, how will I live knowing that I might? And maybe the answer is simply, with care, with curiosity, with compassion for the parts of you still learning, still healing, still waking up. So as you lie here, wrapped in thought and silence and sleepiness, know this. You are not required to figure it all out. You are allowed to be a work in progress. You are allowed to ask questions without needing conclusions. And if the universe is a story already written, then let your part in it be one of tenderness. And if the universe is blank paper, then may your choices write poems. Gentle ones, quiet ones, ones that leave room for change, ones that forgive the page for being messy. Because even if the path is already drawn, you can still choose how you walk it. Barefoot, slowly, gratefully, and with eyes open to wonder. Softly now, like wandering through a familiar dream that you've walked before, but this time with just a little more light. Because somewhere inside all this talk of time and choice and self, there's another question blooming quietly beneath it all. What do we do with what we know? If you're not entirely in control, and the past echoes through your decisions, and the future is always a bit out of reach, then what becomes of meaning? What becomes of purpose? That word purpose often feels too big for bedtime, too heavy, like a backpack stuffed with philosophical textbooks and half-formed expectations. But let's not treat it like a final destination. Let's treat it like a feather. Light, drifting, easy to hold if we don't grip too tight. Because maybe purpose doesn't have to be grand. Maybe it doesn't have to look like a mission statement or sound like a TED Talk. Maybe purpose is just watering your plants, sending a message that says, I was thinking of you, making space for someone else's silence without trying to fill it. Maybe purpose is slow. Maybe it lives in the small moments where you act out of love rather than habit. And here's something curious. Even if our actions are shaped by everything that came before, the meaning we assign to them is ours. You may have been destined to hold a door open for a stranger, but only you get to decide what that moment meant. To them, to you, to the quiet space you made in the world just then, a moment of stillness in a hallway of rushing. So maybe the most meaningful parts of life aren't the ones you plan. Maybe they're the ones you notice. The ones that catch you off guard, like sunlight on old photos. Maybe it's less about finding a purpose and more about allowing it. Letting it reveal itself in gestures, in glances, in those beautiful, fleeting instants where something inside you says, this feels right. And even if you don't know why, that feeling is enough. You don't need to explain it. Just follow it, softly. Now, let's drift one layer deeper. Because if purpose is something we feel, and identity is something we carry, there's something that holds it all together. Something we haven't quite named yet. Something we move through, and that moves through us. Connection. Not just connection to people, though that's part of it, but connection to everything. To the rhythm of life outside your window. To the fact that you share 60% of your DNA with bananas. To the quiet miracle that your body breathes for you, even when you forget to thank it. We are connected not as a metaphor, but as a fact. You are breathing air that's been breathed before, by poets and prophets, by wolves and whales, by the person who stood in your kitchen before it was your kitchen. Everything about you is borrowed from somewhere. Your language, your laughter, even your sense of self was shaped in conversation with others, with family, friends, strangers, teachers, and even that one barista who always spelled your name wrong, but somehow got your order right every time. So maybe free will, if it exists, was never meant to be a solitary power. Maybe it's something we share, something we co-create. Maybe your choices ripple out in ways you'll never see. A smile that softens someone else's day. A kindness that echoes through 3 conversations after your ours. A silence that gives someone else permission to speak. And maybe, just maybe, that's the freedom that matters. Not the freedom to be separate, but the freedom to be involved, to be part of the unfolding, to choose again and again, to be kind in a world that doesn't always reward it, to show up even when you're tired, to soften even when the world feels sharp, to love even when you don't understand. That's a kind of freedom no law can guarantee and no science can fully explain. It's the freedom to be human, beautiful, flawed, wondering, awake. So as your mind continues to slow, as your body releases the last tension in your jaw, your chest, your hands, let yourself rest in that kind of connection. The kind that doesn't need to be proven, only felt. And maybe, for tonight, feeling is enough. And now we settle into this truth. Connection is not a luxury. It's not an afterthought or a sentimental side quest. It is the structure. It is the breath between all things. You may live alone. You may sit in solitude. You may go for days without touching another soul's skin. But you are never disconnected. You are held by gravity, by memory, by the sound of your own heartbeat, which echoes the pulse of every other living creature who has ever wondered what it means to be alive. You are not alone in asking these questions. You are part of a long lineage of seekers, not just philosophers and scientists, but artists and children and people who once sat under the stars and whispered the same doubts to the night sky. Even now, someone somewhere, maybe far away, maybe just down the road, is lying in bed, wondering the same things. Why am I here? Do I make a difference? Was this my choice? Or was this always the way it would go? And even if they never hear your name, or see your face, or read your story, you are linked by the questions, by the mystery, by the fact that you both quietly, vulnerably cared enough to wonder. And if that's not connection, what is? We live in a world that prizes certainty, that sells us answers, that tells us you must know your purpose, you must define your goals, you must optimize and strategize and maximize. But what if part of freedom is being allowed to not know, to not have the answer, to live in the question, to be okay with the fact that sometimes meaning doesn't arrive in neat packages with clear instructions. Sometimes it arrives like birdsong in the morning, unexpected, small, beautiful, and utterly uninterested in whether you're ready to hear it. And when you do hear it, when you feel the tug of something bigger than you, you may find yourself asking the oldest question of all: what should I do with my life? Not in the career sense or the 5-year plan sense, but in the heart sense. In the quiet moments when the noise fades and the room gets still and you realize, this is it. This life, this chance, these hands, this breath, this window, this hour. And in those moments, what we really mean when we say, what should I do with my life, is something closer to, how do I love better? How do I live more gently, more fully, more truthfully? How do I bring light without knowing the whole path? And these too are questions without answers, but they're good questions, soft questions, not burdens but invitations. Invitations to live with your eyes open, to forgive more often, to speak more kindly to others, yes, but especially to yourself, to choose patience even when it's hard, to listen even when you've already heard the story, to let someone in, to stay when it would be easier to walk away, to rest when the world says go. These choices are small, invisible even, but they are powerful. They are the kindling of freedom, because true freedom isn't always loud. It isn't always dramatic or defiant or revolutionary. Sometimes freedom is the choice to whisper, I'm still here, even when it's quiet, even when you're tired, even when you don't know what comes next, especially when you don't know what comes next. That is courage. That is grace. That is the kind of free will no theory can quantify. And now, feel the weight of your own body, not as a burden, but as a home, a place that has carried you through storms and sunshine, a place that has healed, broken, rebuilt over and over without you always noticing. This body is not separate from your thoughts, not just a container or a machine. It's part of the story. It remembers things you don't. It reacts before you do. It holds tension you haven't spoken aloud in your shoulders, your jaw, your spine. And it also holds hope. In the way it relaxes into safety. In the way your chest softens when someone smiles at you with love. In the way your breath deepens when you know, even for a moment, that you are safe. So let your body rest now. Let your mind rest too. You do not need to be certain. You do not need to be perfect. You do not need to be anyone other than exactly who you are right now, in this moment. Whatever choices brought you here, they were enough. You are enough. And whether the next choice is truly yours or shaped by stars and atoms and long ago events you've forgotten, it doesn't matter tonight. Tonight, you are here, still, and whole, and resting in the possibility that freedom, in the end, may not be about doing anything. It may be about being here, being present, being willing to love, even when you don't understand, being willing to ask, even when the answer is silence, being willing to breathe. Let's stay in this warm, slow place where the lines between thought and sleep begin to blur. Where everything slows down, not just your breath, but your need to be anything at all. Here, there is no pressure to understand, no pressure to grow or to heal or to solve, just space. And maybe that's what we were reaching for all along. Not freedom in the political sense, not the kind that shouts and stamps and demands, but freedom in the gentlest form, the freedom to rest, to be seen as you are without needing to explain. Because so much of life, so much of what we call personality or identity, is shaped in response to something else. We become who we are by navigating expectations, fears, disappointments, even praise. And over time, we learn to perform, sometimes for others, sometimes for ourselves. We wear the roles well, the helper, the achiever, the fixer, the one who always keeps it together, the one who never quite feels enough. But here, none of that matters. You don't have to be impressive. You don't have to be insightful or funny or self-aware. You don't have to carry anything, not even your own growth. Because the part of you that's worthy, it's not the part that tries. It's the part that breathes, the part that's still here. And that part has never needed fixing. You've always been enough. Even when you didn't believe it. Especially then. Now let's sink into something even quieter. Something that lives beneath choice, beneath thought. Let's talk about stillness. Stillness is not the absence of movement. It's not laziness or avoidance or a lack of effort. Stillness is presence without reaching. Stillness is that soft pause before you speak. The breath you take before deciding. The heartbeat between the impulse and the action. And we don't get much stillness, do we? The world doesn't exactly hand it out generously. We live in a culture that celebrates speed. We scroll through lives. We respond to texts before we've even understood them. We multitask rest. We optimize joy. But deep down, you know this. You were never built for constant motion. You are a creature of rhythm. A body that moves in cycles. A heart that knows how to quicken and slow. A mind that blooms and sleeps and forgets and remembers in waves. So give yourself permission now to not perform, to not produce, to not be anything other than breathing, in and out. Notice how your chest rises, how it falls without asking your permission, how your breath comes to you as a gift, how even in sleep your body continues to love you, keeping you warm, keeping you safe, keeping you whole. Let's sit here a while, in this quiet field of nothingness, not empty, just unoccupied. And in that unoccupied space, maybe you'll notice something curious. There's stillness, but there's also softness, a subtle, steady hum beneath the quiet, something like warmth, something like love. Not the romantic kind, not even the sentimental kind, but the simple, steady love of life itself. The kind that cradles newborns and flowers and people who have forgotten how to love themselves. The kind that doesn't ask if you're trying hard enough. It just is. It's in the way trees continue to grow even when no one's watching. It's in the way waves still kiss the shore, even when you're far away. It's in the way your own heart has beat for you, again and again, without a single thank you card. This love, this quiet undercurrent, is always there. And when you rest, when you soften, when you stop trying to control or fix or plan, you can feel it again. Not as something you earn, but as something you remember. And maybe, just maybe, that's what real freedom is. Not the ability to make 1,000 choices, but the ability to let go of the one that says, I am not enough. Because the truth is, you are not defined by your mistakes. You are not the sum of your successes. You are not your title. You are not your trauma. You are not your productivity or your plans or your potential. You are something far quieter, far softer, far more enduring. You are the space that holds it all. And that space is sacred. Now let yourself feel that. Not in your mind, but in your body. Feel it in the way your shoulders sink deeper into your mattress. Feel it in the way your jaw releases. In the slow, full breath you didn't realize you were holding. You're not holding the world together. You never were. And it's okay to rest. It's okay to stop mid-thought. It's okay to not finish the sentence or the project or the pattern. Rest is not a break from meaning. Rest is part of it. Because meaning doesn't live in constant action. It lives here. In stillness. In softness. In the part of the night where nothing needs to be said, but everything is felt. So if you're drifting now, let yourself drift. If you're halfway between sleep and waking, stay there. Float. This is not the end. It's just a breath, a pause, a kindness you give yourself. And when you wake, whenever that may be, you may not remember these words. But maybe, just maybe, you'll remember how you felt. Safe, soft, whole, and free. No need to rush. We're not heading anywhere in particular. There's no finish line, no big insight waiting around the corner. Just more softness, more stillness, more of that gentle unfolding. Because the closer we move to the center of things, the quieter it gets. Not because there's less to say, but because there's more to feel. And so, here in this deeper quiet, let's open up one more layer. The mystery. The one that lives underneath all the wondering. The one that isn't looking for a solution, but simply waiting to be noticed. It's the same mystery that sits in the gap between cause and effect. The same one that lives in the space between heartbeat and breath. The same one that makes you stop in the middle of brushing your teeth just to stare at your reflection and think, wow, I'm really here. You can't solve it. You're not supposed to. You're only meant to sit beside it. Like sitting next to a friend who doesn't need to speak. Because maybe mystery isn't a wall, it's a doorway. Not one you walk through, but one you lean against. A place to rest your head when everything feels too sharp or too loud or too demanding. And here's something beautiful. You don't have to understand life to fall in love with it. You can fall in love with the way sunlight hits your pillow in the morning. You can fall in love with the way warm tea feels in your hands. With the way strangers laugh in cafes. With the way your feet still carry you, even on days when your spirit feels heavy. You can fall in love with the world, even when it confuses you. Even when it disappoints you. even when you don't know your next step. Because love doesn't need clarity. It just needs presence. It needs a yes that doesn't come from logic, but from the heart. A soft, slow yes that whispers, I'm still here. I'm still trying. I'm still willing to care. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. So many of us move through life feeling like we have to earn our place. Earn our rest. Earn our breath. As if simply being isn't quite enough. But listen, you don't have to justify your existence. You don't have to prove you're worth the air in your lungs. You're already worthy. You were worthy when you were born. You were worthy the first time you cried and someone came to hold you. You are worthy now, in this moment, with all your doubts, with all your contradictions, with all the invisible battles you fought and never told anyone about. Your story may be quiet, your voice may be soft, but you still belong. You belong to the world, to this breath, to this moment. And that belonging doesn't require permission. It doesn't require performance. It just requires being. So, if you feel lost right now, that's okay. If you feel uncertain, that's okay. If you feel small or broken or overwhelmed, that's okay too. Because those feelings are part of being alive. They are not signs of failure. They are signs of feeling. And feeling is what makes you human. Not just your ideas, not just your choices, but your capacity to ache, to care, to long for something just beyond words. Let that longing live in you. Don't rush it. Don't label it. Just let it glow quietly, like the moon behind thin clouds. You don't have to chase it. You don't have to fix it. You just have to let it be part of you. Because the deepest truths, they don't arrive with trumpets. They don't knock on the door and introduce themselves. They rise slowly, like tide water, like dawn. And when they come, they don't shout. They whisper, I'm here. I've always been here. You've never been alone. So let that be your lullaby tonight. Not a promise of clarity, but a reminder of presence. You are here, and that's enough. You are loved, even by yourself, though you may not always feel it. You are safe, not because the world is predictable, but because you've made it this far. You've kept going, and that matters. So let the night hold you now. Let your thoughts soften. Let the silence speak for you. You don't need more words, just more being, and you're already doing it. So beautifully. Sleep well, traveler. Thank you for wandering with me. And thank you for visiting Sleep Library.